Good afternoon. I have the distinct pleasure to welcome you to our opening of the 2016 Alliance for Community Media Annual Conference here in Boston. Welcome.
What a great audience. Thank you so much for joining us here at ACM Boston. And if you haven't had the opportunity, please be sure to tweet #ACM Boston, right? Tweet up a storm here as we have our keynote on this lovely Thursday together. You know, as I'm thinking about why we're gathered here today, I think a lot about some of the ideas that are really at the core of our work. Ideas that really everybody in the room is devoted to. And I think if you think about the core things that drive you in your work on a day-to-day basis, I think one of the key things for all of us, regardless of what form of work we do in community media, is this, that all people need meaning and a sense of belonging in their lives. It's one of the fundamental issues for most all of us in our work on a day-to-day basis. When you're doing place-based media, what happens as places and communities evolve and change? It's one of the questions I think a lot of us are asking ourselves as we're doing our work on a day-to-day basis. What happens as traditions grow, as the stories in our lives become more complex, as our communities become more complex? What happens as technology and key institutions change more rapidly than our democracy can? How do we maintain that sense of meaning, that sense of belonging, that sense of democratic engagement in times of change and in times of crisis? Those are just some of the questions that we're asking ourselves here as we gather together to celebrate our town in Boston this year. We took our inspiration this year not from that famous play by Thornton Wilder of the same name, so just want to make sure that you're clear about this. It wasn't the dramaturg in me that really took the inspiration. Although, you know, there's plenty in that work that we could have taken as our inspiration because it really details the life of a small community and the individuals in that small community. No, the theme that we take a riff on is the now famous moment from one of Boston's key icons, Big Papi David Ortiz. A man who will ever be known as one of the greatest Red Sox and one of the worst trades that the Minnesota Twins ever made. He's a man who grew up in the Dominican Republic. He will always be a part of this city for all sorts of reasons, for his monumental achievements and accomplishments, for his big personality, and also for the words of pride that he uttered in the wake of the Marathon bombings just 3 years ago. That act of terror that came in the middle of a beloved tradition could have shattered people in the city. You probably remember the words that he uttered on the field at Fenway Park. This is our effing city. Yeah? This is our effing city. Yes, it was vulgar. Yes, the FCC famously deemed it a fleeting expletive. They let it go, they let it pass. But it was a real and genuine expression of defiance and love. Defiance and love in the face of violence and fear that could have ripped this community apart. I want to put it to you that the forces at play in our society could pit us against ourselves if we're not mindful and if we don't remember that call to meaning that defines so much of our work in community media and PEG across the United States. We need to look at our work, at preserving and building our communities through media as an act of defiance and love here in 2016. Why do I say defiance? Well, it's fair to say that we're seeing a media system that de-emphasizes and destroys local institutions in many cases. It de-emphasizes place for economies of scale. It increases quarterly profits, and it doesn't necessarily reflect the reality of people's lives in communities across our country. So it's an act of positive defiance to say that communities matter here in 2016. That we have a right to be more than just entertained by our media system. That we have a need to be informed, to be inspired, to be challenged, to be engaged in meaningful ways in our communities. And that our media system needs to reflect the needs of our democracy. If we love our communities, the places that we all serve. And if we love our democracy, I think there is actually a sound argument that our organizations need to find ways to build new institutions and new practices that support meaningful civic engagement and actually support what my former colleague and friend Josh Stearns has called acts of journalism in our towns and cities. That's why you'll see an emphasis over the course of the next couple of days on innovation in our field and partnerships and practices that build journalism on the local level. And it's why we've invited our friend John Nichols to be our keynote speaker today to kick off our time here in Boston. John argues that America is in a democratic crisis in no small part because of the death of journalism in towns and communities across the United States. The answer to that crisis is a media that's devoted to the needs of people and a reinvigoration of journalism in our town. John is the national affairs correspondent with The Nation magazine, and he's the associate editor of the Capital Times in my former hometown, Madison, Wisconsin. I'm a son of Stoughton, born at Stoughton General. He writes regularly on politics and media for In These Times and The Progressive, and he appears regularly as a commentator on MSNBC. With Bob McChesney, Nichols co-founded Free Press, the national media reform advocacy group which has championed media diversity, net neutrality, and online privacy in the past decade. John is the author of way too many books to mention, but his most recent work with Bob McChesney is People Get Ready, the fight against a jobless economy and a citizenless democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome John Nichols.
Get the microphone right, because I think we all know that's production. Brothers and sisters, my name is John Nichols, and I have come here to clarify this accent debate. I come from the rural Midwest, and we have no accent. Everyone else has an accent. It's why we travel. I had a girlfriend once from Italy. She had a fabulous accent. It was beautiful. I said one time to her, "I love your accent." And she said, "I do not have an accent. You have an accent." And of course, that was the end of our relationship. But I want to promise you that I will not, like Mary Van Sickle, attempt a Boston accent in front of Bostonians. But I will honor her for that great Midwestern boldness of trying it, and I think she is one of the finest people in community media in this country. You have an incredible president in Mary. And you have, I want to tell you, Mike, I don't know if he's up for a review or anything like that. But I will tell you that as somebody who has run and continues to be on the board of a national media organization and that has worked a lot in these areas, Mike is one of the most respected and cherished figures in our movements to build out diverse community media in this country, and I think you are an incredibly lucky organization to have him at the head of your staff. Now, as I was hanging around here, I got to talk to a lot of old friends from movements and from struggles over the years as regards net neutrality, community media, media concentration, a host of other issues. I think Tony Riddle is here someplace from all the way back. I got to see Tony from 600,000 subscribers in Brooklyn, an incredible media outlet there, doing great work, and I'm so honored to be with him today. I also got to talk to new friends, and the folks from Philly Cam, Ariel and folks. Ariel, it's Ariel, right? And you've been working there for 8 months. Is that right? As youth coordinator, and she already covered a Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. Incredible work. And then she's in the same room with Curtis, who's been here in Boston for 31 years, building up one of the most respected community media outlets, not just in the country, but in the world. And I'm so honored to be here with Curtis and to be in your city. I'm now going to go table by table and introduce everyone. But if you will just imagine that happened, I'll say a few things today. I have been, in the last 2 weeks, in London and Edinburgh and Reykjavik, Iceland, and various and sundry other locations, working on a big global project on austerity and media and a host of issues. And I have to tell you, I'm a little bit tired. It's been a lot of travel, going a lot of places, and as soon as I got back, I was thrown right into the fun task of trying to explain Donald Trump today. And so it's been busy time, and there's a, question. Why, when you're doing all these other things, would you break out and come to a conference like this? I mean, it's cool to go around the world and do all sorts of stuff, and it is cool to go on TV and comment on Donald Trump, even though that's all anybody on TV does, but on broadcast television and cable. But I happen to think, and I'll explain a little bit in a moment, I happen to think that you people are the most important people in American media today, and that you are the only prospect we have for a democratic and functional media in this country. So I wouldn't want to be anyplace else but right here with you people. I don't say that casually. I believe that old media in this country is dying. And I believe that new media in this country has no sense of direction. And I believe that community media in this country, rooted in communities like Bismarck and Boston and Philadelphia and New York and communities across this country, local community access media is the one institution that, as the old dies and the new tries to find its way, builds a bridge to something real and something connected with who we are. If we don't have you, and if you do not expand what you do dramatically in the years to come, it will not just be our media system that goes fully dysfunctional. It will be our democracy itself that goes fully dysfunctional. You are that essential to the future of this country. Now let me back up for a moment and tell you that I understand a little bit, only a little bit, about the moment we are in. And this is an incredible moment, beyond media, beyond politics itself. This is a moment of radical change in this country and in this world. And we don't pause often enough to think about how radical that change is. But imagine your lives 20 years ago. Happily, there's some young people in this room who cannot imagine their lives 20 years ago. But for those of you who can, imagine how you did things 20 years ago. Imagine not having an iPhone, not having your media with you wherever you go, not having the ability to communicate information instantaneously. Imagine stepping back to a time in which most of our communications was controlled by a handful of very powerful individuals and institutions. And over the last 20 years, that has blown apart. We have changed everything, not merely in our media, but in our economics, our politics, our society. We are living in an age of radical transformation that is every bit as extreme as the industrial revolutions of the early 19th and early 20th centuries, the dual industrial revolutions. And the transformation is jarring. It throws people off. It makes people uncertain and scared and overwhelmed. We are 30 years into an experiment with globalization that is necessary, it is real, but it has not been well managed. And we are in a situation where globalization has transformed our communities without necessarily rewarding them. We have suffered, and there are people nodding in the room, and I can guarantee I know where you're from. We have suffered radical and extreme deindustrialization of this country that has transformed our urban areas into job-free zones. Literally places where it is very, very hard for a working class kid, for a poor kid, to imagine having permanent, stable employment. Globalization, deindustrialization, radical changes, and then overlaying that, a digital revolution, which literally has transformed every bit of how we communicate. Not just in a media standpoint, but how we communicate with our friends and family, and literally how our children relate to the world. How many of you have actually seen your child's face directly in recent months? As opposed to looking down like this. Hi, Mom. You know, this is changing us. It's changing how we live and who we are. And then, on top of that digital revolution, we have a revolution in robotification of our workplaces and our lives. And this is just coming online, but it is radical. We are, 10 years from now, going to be all driving around, not at the wheel of our cars, but sitting there, and it'll be driving us. The driverless car will become an absolute reality in the next 10 years. And that's okay, because if you've seen me drive, you're going to be very, very happy that a robot is doing that work. However, the number one job for men in a number of American states is driving. And so if we are going to have driverless cars, driverless trucks, driverless buses, driverless backhoes, driverless tractors, what are people going to do? And similarly, one of the number one jobs for women is banking, working in banks. What do we do when banking is entirely automated? When there just aren't bank branches anymore, when you literally do it all off your phone? These are the changes that are coming in the next 10 to 15 years. Radical transformations of our work life and our society. You put that all together, and you ask yourself, why is anyone surprised that the 2016 presidential election is the most volatile and unsettling and weird political moment in our lives? Why would we be surprised? All this is coming at people, and they are seeking to respond to it. It's normal. It's rational to seek explanations and ways out of that which is overwhelming you. Unfortunately, we don't always get good leaders of the way out. And I'm not talking about any particular candidate here. What I'm suggesting to you is our politics hasn't caught up with our change. Our politics hasn't caught up with what's happening to us. We're not discussing in our campaigning the reality of our changing lives. And that's making people a little bit crazy at times. Now, historically, the bridge between our changing lives and our politics has been media. But unfortunately, the changes that are taking place are transforming our media so radically that by and large, traditional media is incapable of dealing with the moment we are living in. And if you don't believe me, then you go upstairs after I finish talking and you turn the television set on. And if you're not watching Curtis's local network here with their incredible, is it 25-year-old or 30-year-old nightly, half-hour nightly news show where they actually have an anchor and reporters who go out and cover this town intensively at the local level. If you're not watching that, if you're watching one of the national cable networks, I guarantee you what you're going to hear about. You're going to hear about an Olympic athlete who made up a gas station incident. You're going to, and I'm not kidding, it's going to be intense. They'll have like people analyzing that and discussing it. And then you're going to hear about Donald Trump. And you're going to hear about it wall to wall. And why are you going to only get that? Why are you going to get so little out of these networks that have so much in the way of resources that are so big, that are so powerful? It is because they have been reduced to dumb beasts. A dumb beast needs to be fed and responds to that which feeds it. And the dumb beast of major media in this country lives for ratings and advertising dollars. And if a Donald Trump puts food out every morning for that dumb beast, it will come and eat every single day, and it will not stop. It will eat itself to death. That is the simple reality. That is not a criticism of Donald Trump, although if you'd like me to criticize him, I could give you a conversation. But that is it. We have dumbed our national media down to such an extent that it doesn't function. It doesn't give us anywhere near the information we need. And I wish that that was the crisis. But it isn't. The real crisis is at the local level. Because what has happened is the degeneration of national commercial media in this country has now filtered down to the local level. We have seen with the concentration of media ownership the death of local journalism in countries across this country, in communities across this country. Now, I'm going to back you up for 1 second and try and explain this. How many of you have read Ben Bagdickian's wonderful books, The Media Monopoly? A few of you, and I appreciate that. Those who haven't, I recommend Bagdickian. Bagdickian is the former Washington Post Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who quit major media in order to write about concentration of ownership, commercialization of journalism, and frankly, the crisis that would extend from it. He started in the early 1980s saying 50 individuals, 50 companies controlled most of our media. By the time he finished writing, he is down to 6 companies controlling our major media in this country. The story of media monopoly and media concentration is an important one. But when Bagdickian died a while back, I went back and read through the new introductions to each of his books. And in 1997, he wrote a new introduction to the media monopoly in which he talked about, for the first time, what would happen as the internet rose in an era of media consolidation. And what he said was that as a few companies became the dominant sources of information at the national level, they would so overemphasize presidential politics and national stories. And then as local media became consolidated and concentrated, it would begin to mirror that overemphasis on presidential politics and the national. And slowly but surely, we would lose baseline coverage of our city councils, our school boards, our communities, so that we would get to a point where the average person did not know who their city council member was, did not know who their school board member was, and that people would no longer participate in local elections, even though that is where most power exists. Bagdickian predicted that in 1997. Today, survey research shows us that most Americans struggle to name their city council members, their school board members, and even their state legislators and members of Congress. We know from election results that elections for local races now draw as little as 20%, even 10%, even 5% turnout. We know from people who struggle to maintain civic life in communities across this country that often it is a challenge to figure out how to draw people in to all the activities of our communities. It's not news to you that that is a reality. But here's why that is a reality. As we've concentrated ownership of commercial media, daily newspapers have diminished and declined, sometimes closing in cities such as Seattle and Albuquerque and Tucson and Kansas City, Kansas, and Ann Arbor, Michigan. Communities across this country have literally lost daily papers. But where they haven't been lost, it's almost as bad, because I ask you, is there anybody in this room who's picked up a daily newspaper in their community and said, wow, this is too heavy to lift up. It's too full of information. It's too overwhelming in their coverage of our community. It used to be that way. You used to be able to get a daily newspaper where we used to harm children by making them deliver daily newspapers because they were so heavy. Today, when they deliver a daily newspaper, it's like tissue, if they deliver it at all. The fact of the matter is our daily newspapers have diminished. They become so much less. And our radio stations across this country, the horrific Telecommunications Act of 1996, which allowed for consolidation of ownership of radio stations, has led to a situation where thousands and thousands of local radio personalities are off the air, and they have been replaced by syndication of communication. So you can go anywhere in this country and find out what Rush Limbaugh thinks, but you cannot find out what the local school board is doing. That is a crisis of communications, and it is reflected most in our television. Our local TV news. I'm not going to make any of you watch it, but if you did, what you would find is 7 to 8 minutes of weather, 7 to 8 minutes of sports, and then a cacophony of little references to crime. And you would be hard-pressed to find a coherent report on a school board meeting, a coherent report on a city council meeting. We have literally culled out news from our local TV stations. And these are good people that work there. I'm not criticizing the reporters. They would love to do more, but often they are sent out to cover the most absurd stories about how to exercise, because some consultant has told them that's what news is. And if they do cover politics, they cover presidential politics. What do you think about what Trump just said, rather than going deep into the local? We are losing local conversation in this country. And that's where you come in. Because, brothers and sisters, if you see someone's calling in to say I'm correct, and I appreciate that. But, brothers and sisters, if you are waiting for commercial media to fill the void in our democracy, it is not going to happen. If you put off the responsibility to fill that void, then you, not some CEO, not some Roger Ailes someplace, you will be responsible for the diminishment of our democracy, because you are our last hope. You are, by and large, non-commercial. You are, by and large, very local. And I have met enough of you to know that you really care about the communities that you live in. You take seriously the concept of our town. And brothers and sisters, it is time for you to become our media. I'm sick of the term alternative media. You are not the alternative anymore. Major media in this country has failed. You are the necessary central media of this country, and you must step up and fill the void in our democratic discussions in the communities where you live. You need, yes, you can applaud yourselves, not me. You need to organize the debates. This fall, we're going to have a huge discussion about the Commission on Presidential Debates and the debate between Trump and Clinton, which, by the way, I hope also includes Jill Stein of the Greens and Gary Johnson of the Libertarian Party. That's right. But the fact of the matter is that national level debate is not the debate that we need. We need you organizing debates in your communities, between candidates for the legislature, between candidates for Congress, between candidates for prosecutors' positions and for city council positions. You need to bring it down home, and you need to treat it very seriously. Go out and find the League of Women Voters, the people that the Commission on Presidential Debates pushed aside, and you say, hey, they don't want you organizing presidential debates. We will work with you to organize local debates in this community, and we will do a better job than the Commission on Presidential Debates is going to do this fall. And I know some of you are already doing it because I watch it across this country, but it has to become more and more and more, and you need to do more. When Curtis is broadcasting this half-hour news show every night, I know it's hard. I know the resources are limited. I talk to some of these people for these big stations. They say, oh, we've got 8, 9 production people. We've got, on-air talent and stuff like that. I know other folks who come from communities where it's all volunteer or virtually all volunteer. I understand the dynamics and the challenges. But brothers and sisters, we are in a moment of democratic crisis, small d democratic crisis in this country. And so it is time to step up, not merely as employees of community access stations, but literally as citizens to begin to fill that void. We need to produce our own news shows. They need to be on every station. We need to produce our own community affairs programs that are serious and constant, not one day a week, but every day of the week. Brothers and sisters, community access stations can and must fill the void, and then community access stations can and must go to foundations and civic groups and say, it is your moral responsibility to fund this programming. You've called your conference Our Town. And I was disappointed in Mike when he said it wasn't based off the play. Because Thornton Wilder was born in my hometown of Madison, Wisconsin. He grew up in the neighboring town in a little cottage in Maple Bluff. Thornton Wilder was a good Wisconsinite, and so, like all good Wisconsinites suffering from an inferiority complex, he didn't cover Wisconsin. He wrote about New England, because, of course, Wisconsinites think they're experts in every place else. And so our town is based in a little New England town called, I got to make sure I check it, Grover's Corners. Now, Grover's Corners was a very small town. Didn't have enough people to have a big community access station with, tons of staff and stuff like that. But I like to believe that there's a Grover's Corner, New England out there someplace with a community access station. And I like to believe that it's largely volunteer, maybe some horribly underpaid executive director or something there. And I like to believe that there's somebody in that little town up in New Hampshire where they elect 400 members of their state legislature, covering the Grover's Corners state representative race as intensely as any national network would cover the presidential race. And I like to believe that that's how we're going to rebuild American democracy. Community access stations taking very, very seriously their role, not merely in giving everybody a voice, which is a wonderful concept and a necessary concept, but in giving democracy itself a voice. Because major media in this country is no longer giving democracy a voice, especially at the local level. And our politicians, too frequently, are willing to fill the void by raising money and putting campaign ads on. And so where are we going to get the basic information, the basic debates, the basic dialogue? It isn't going to come from the commercial sector. It isn't going to come from the politicians. It is going to come from each and every one of you. And as you build this new network of small d democracy institutions across this country, I will stand with you and celebrate you and tell the world that you are the essential force for rebuilding American democracy, and I will challenge every foundation and every funder to give their resources to the institutions that believe in democracy itself, not those who are trying to profit off it. And as my mother tells me, when you get the good applause line, that's the time in which to say thank you. Let's take some questions from the audience. Woo! I should have brought my iPhone up here and taken a picture of you, because you look so great. Now, we got 2 microphones, is that right? Mike's the boss of this stuff. Yeah, come and ask some tough questions or try and speak in different accents. Hey, brother.
Aloha.
Aloha from Hawaii. Where in Hawaii?
I'm not in Hawaii now, but that's okay. Maui. We can go there, and I'll show you around.
Okay.
Having attended some of your National Conference for Media Reform events, which were awesome, by the way, I guess I felt struck by the framing about public media being more institutional, the PBS and NPR models. And I just wonder if you could talk a little bit about that dynamic of the relationship in our work and theirs.
That's a great question, and thank you. Look, one of the things that we had to learn when we went into media reform, Bob McChesney and I started writing about these issues about literally 20 years ago. And if you can imagine, the first time we went to the Nation magazine and said, we want to write about media reform. We want to write about media as an issue. And we want to write about people getting engaged and trying to affect media and change media in this country as an issue. They said, we wrote a 4,000-word manifesto. And my editor cut it down to 800 words. Because there was a sense that not that long ago, even with the great writing of Chomsky and Ed Herman and others, Ben Bagnikian's great writing, that media was something organic, that it was natural, that it wasn't an issue. And we tended to talk about it in a very vapid way. And the vapid way we talked about it was commercial media and then NPR and public TV. So that was sort of the reality. And too frequently in that discussion, community media got left out, or it got pushed to the side, or it was seen as some sort of secondary institution. One of the things that we've learned, and Josh Stearns, who you mentioned, is a tremendous figure in helping to guide us in this way, as many of you have been, is that we no longer talk about public broadcasting or public media. We talk about public and community media as a whole, that our federal government and our state and local governments should recognize their responsibility to fund. And this is a big deal. I know people are often uncomfortable with the idea of government funding media, and that's a legitimate concern. But the fact of the matter is, government has always funded media in every country around the world. And in the freest countries in the world, in countries that the Economist magazine's Democracy Index rated as the freest countries in the world, they have very well-funded community media, to the extent that in Norway they often fund competing institutions and communities so you can have different voices, different political attitudes and stuff like that. It's common around the world. We have a crisis in the United States. We starve public broadcasting, and then people get in a debate about the quality of public broadcasting. They say, oh, I don't like this. I don't like how they cover the Middle East, or I don't like how they cover this or that. And without recognizing that it's been starved down to a level where it barely gets by. And then we don't fund community media except at the most minimal level around this country. And so we don't begin to understand how strong and great well-funded community media can be. And so when I talk about this democracy deficit that we have in this country, this crisis that we have in this country as regards coverage of local democracy, one of the things that I say to my friend who's gone and sat down is, and one of the things we say in the media reform movement is that community access stations, managers, staffers, volunteers, need to get very, very good at advocating for themselves as stewards of democracy, as literally the vehicle by which democracy itself can be made to function. Because we have a crisis. Yeah, you can applaud yourselves on that. No, but we have a great big crisis in this country. Democratic legitimacy, small d democratic legitimacy. If you have a local government elected in an election that draws 5% turnout, if 19 out of every 20 people don't participate in a local election, is that local government really representative of the community, or is it representative of a tiny sector of engaged people? The role that you have is to spread that out, to get more people engaged, to get more people excited about local politics, about local governance. And I don't mean politics just like an election. I mean issues. I mean the drama of our debates. The fact of the matter is, I can't think of any institution better than community access media when it comes to covering the issues raised by the Black Lives Matter movement. I can't think of anyone better, because these are institutions at your best who say, come on in, produce a show, show us how to cover this. Instead of simply saying, oh, we're going to drop into your community and we're going to spend a few minutes paying attention to you, you, as institutions, say, come on in and show us how to do it. That's what Curtis was talking about when he's talking about the Haitian community coming in. That's an incredible story. That is a beautiful story. And the fact of the matter is, we have fundamental issues in this country that are not being addressed, and they are only going to be addressed if you folks take charge of them. I'm not talking about continuing to do what you're doing. I'm talking about looking at community media as something much bigger and much more important and much more vital than even some of you may imagine it to be, and then making your communities, and frankly, making your federal government more conscious of the need to fund community media. More questions? Just the guy from Hawaii? I hope I see someone step into the microphone there. Not that there's anything wrong with just the guy from Hawaii.
So most of the community media in this room is funded by a formula which has a very uncertain future, the franchise fees.
Right.
What do you think is the likelihood of creating a policy that would allow a digital dividend that would be devoted to the public interest for fostering things like community media in the future media landscape? And how would you advocate going about kind of creating that dividend?
Well, you're right on target. You're exactly on target. You know, I was literally just in Great Britain, where they still have their fee based on your television. You buy a television, and you pay a fee for the television. They don't care what you watch, but some of that money is going to go to the BBC. And isn't it ironic that when you have a steady stream of funding, absolutely guaranteed, structurally guaranteed, that you get what a lot of people think of as the best media system in the world? This is not hard stuff. You can't de-link funding from quality. It doesn't mean that what volunteers are doing across this country for free isn't great. I have seen volunteer-produced programming that is so dramatically better than everything on a certain cable network that it's not even comparable. So I know we can do things for free, but to turn the lights on, to get the door open, to hire somebody to coordinate, to begin to promote what you do, and that's a huge part of this, by the way. I want community access stations to have substantial amounts of money to promote the coverage that they're doing so that people know they can turn to it. It's every other network does, right? Every other network says, come and watch us, right? But community access, you're supposed to be out there and hope that somebody comes home drunk at 4 a.m. and the TV has defaulted to that place where you're at, and maybe they'll like what they see. And I'm sorry, I don't want to, before we take that other question. So yes, I like the funding formula idea. I think it's really vital. The way to do it is to develop a national standard. Don't do it bit and piece. It may be hard, you may have to fight, you may have to debate. But develop a national standard, and then you go to the people who understand media issues in our Congress, and you make them introduce it as a bill so that you can actually fight for something. Now, I know some legislation has been introduced. I realize we're recreating the wheel. But the fact of the matter is that you need Bernie Sanders, who will return to the United States Senate, and Senator Markey from Massachusetts, and I can name you a half dozen people in the House who really wake up in the morning and think about media issues. You need them to introduce legislation on your behalf, and then you need to go to Jason Chaffetz and people from Utah and some other places who have taken seriously the disconnect on local media and the disconnect, very conservative folks, and you need to get them on your legislation and make it real. Because you can't pass something, you can't make something happen if there's not a reality that you can say, we want you to back AB 5740 or, HR 2160. It's got to be real. So that's my core answer to you on that question. But it can be done. Every other country in the world does it. And by the way, I just want to, before I take the next question there, and I know we're probably running short on time, but I want to tell you one quick story about that 4 a.m. thing, right, where they come home drunk. I'm a Wisconsinite, so I have come home at 4 a.m. I swear I'm not making this up. There's a community access station in Madison, Wisconsin. It's been on forever. Mike knows about it. One night, I'm watching, literally like really late at night, and they had a show. They had candidates got to come in and sit at a table, and then they had a phone that they could pick up, and when they picked it up, the voice went out, and they'd have callers call in, and the candidate would sit there and talk to the person on the phone, which I thought was fabulous. It's like I would not change a thing about it. But, so it's like 2 in the morning, the independent candidate for sheriff, Ben Mazzell, whose slogan was "A sheriff with a heart," and whose other slogan was "Only obey good laws." Ben Mazzell was sitting there answering the phone, and some guy called in, and he clearly had been to the bars that night, and he said, "Look, my girlfriend left me. I lost my job. I don't see any point." This is a serious story. I don't see any point in going on. I got a bottle of pills here or something. I'm just sick of life. It's a horrible thing. And I mean, this guy, it sounded suicidal. And Ben Mazzell, the candidate for sheriff, who unfortunately did not win, Ben goes, "Hey man, we've all been there. You had a little extra to drink. That's okay. All sorts of crazy thoughts are going through your head. I want you to sit back on the couch. If you've got some substance that calms you down, that's okay. But don't do anything rash tonight, because sometime in a couple hours from now, the sun is going to go up. You're going to look out there, and it's going to be a beautiful morning. And you're going to look at this world, and you're going to say, I have a place in it. Somehow the rainbow of humanity has found me, and I'm going to shine." And it was like this crazy hippie thing. And the guy goes, "Thanks, you helped me a lot." I don't want community access media to be reduced quite to that moment. But I will tell you, that's organic human media that connects with people who are in trouble and who are challenged. And if we go to that basic level and then build from that and recognize that we have communities that have troubles and challenges, and if we connect with them in that way and we hear their pain and we speak back to them in encouraging and human and decent ways, community access media has the ability to save lives, not just at the individual level, but in broader communal levels. This is a big deal, what you do.
The idea of community access organizations' activities bubbling up into a widespread change parallels a contemporary meme in which individuals speaking on the internet have an unparalleled opportunity to reach wide numbers of people. But that tends to be all on an individual basis. Can you say something about the relationship between access organizations and individual speakers on the internet?
Yeah, it's very good. What a great question, and you're such a brilliant group here. And good looking, too, I might add. But no, that's such an important question, because people will tell you, you know, we don't really need community access stations anymore because we've got all this internet, right? It's the digital revolution. You guys with your cameras and your microphones, that's so 20th century, early 21st century. It's the past. Now it's all, we can all do it on our cell phone. Here's the problem. Do you know that major media institutions across this country are closing down the comment sections? I think the Washington Post just did it today. They're closing down the comment sections on their articles, not because they don't want to be criticized, but because it is such a festering, horrid zone of humanity's worst instincts. Literally, we are learning how awful we are. And it's really bad. You know, I mean, I'm not, you know, I don't mind criticism. I actually enjoy it, but I'm like perverse. But I'm telling you, you know, this poor woman from, I hope I get the country, was it the Bahamas or Bermuda? The woman who dove across the line at the Olympics, right? Where was she from? Bahamas, okay. So she dives across the line at the Olympics, right? Did you see? I mean, I don't know if you saw what was said about her on Twitter and like Facebook. It's unbelievably horrific. Now, if she had been a blonde white woman from the U.S., I hate to tell you, but I think what would have been said is, wow, look at that determination. Look at that spirit. But instead, she's not. She's somebody who people felt like completely free to diminish for trying to win a race. And we see that in our politics. We see that in our culture and our music, in so many places. And so there is something potentially healing about an institutional voice, a community access station that invites people in to speak, that lets people say their view, that lets people be strong, maybe even extreme at times, but that it's done in public. Your face is there. Your name is there. You're real. We have a real challenge with the internet, and that is that the anonymous nature of it frees people to become incredibly base and at times incredibly destructive in our conversations. And so I love the internet. I use it constantly and I celebrate it. I've fought for net neutrality, and I want people to be able to say and do what they want to do on the internet. I'm not trying to limit it in any way. But I am suggesting at this point that it is not capable of fostering the full and resonant conversations that we need to have a functional democracy. Maybe it will develop into that, but it's not there yet. And so what I would suggest is that the difference with community access stations is you foster a conversation where we see the faces of the people that are involved and where we have some connection to the humanity. And I think maybe, just maybe, somebody that's got to get up out of their chair and walk to an office or walk to a station and sit down and open up that conversation, that just that act of it causes us, even if we're angry, even if we're impassioned, even if we have deep frustrations, it causes us to think a little bit about how we say things and maybe about how to say things in a way that instead of driving people away from the process and making people feel sullied or harmed by engaging in a discussion, making them feel renewed and engaged and perhaps validated.
John, I'm in a quandary. I come from a city that is the capital of New York State, Albany, New York. And I don't know if any of you have the same issue, but the mayor of the city of Albany has taken our franchise fee hostage and uses it to help close an $18 million budget gap. And we're supposed to get $1.2 million. Instead, we are given $40,000 a year for capital costs. And we have very little money, or no money actually, for operating costs, except what we get to pay a part-timer. And they expect us to run everything only with a volunteer. And I don't know if this is happening in every community access, but the finances here are, for my community access channel, is deplorable. And I don't know how to fix it, and I don't know what advice you might have, but we need to.
Let's talk about that in a sec. I'm going to hold you and keep your idea. I'm going to answer your question. I'm going to take this quick woman behind you quickly and let her ask her question, and then I'll pull it all together, and we will get you out to the whatever cocktails are in the hallway.
But you don't know her question, so how do you know it'll pull together?
I know it will. I have great faith in humanity. I have faith in humanity. Or I'll just answer each of them together. I promise you we'll answer it. It's a very good question. Yes?
I'm not sure it's a question.
Good.
I wanted to ask if there was anyone else in the room who was also a member of the League of Women Voters.
League of Women Voters, raise your hands proudly. The most radical organization in America.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
I spent some years on the state board in Connecticut, during which time we did senatorial debates and governor's debates until the year that we had the Green candidate for governor debate. And after that, year by year, the partnering organizations, ABC, et cetera, said, that's all right, we'll take care of it. And we no longer do it at the state level. It's hard to push back as people think of us as a bunch of old ladies and kind of disappearing and not being relevant and being accused of partisanship a lot of the time. So please, if you do partner with your League of Women Voters, offer them protection on that level.
And respect.
That, yes, we're political, but we're not stupid.
Very good. Thank you. That was excellent. Well, let's pull these together now, because they're certainly not disconnected. Our friend from Albany asked about funding and about politicians holding funding. What you're suggesting is holding it hostage, basically, or using it, diverting it away. Two things I will suggest to you, and they do relate. First off, you need to find allies and comrades in this struggle. And so I would say that in every community across this country, many of you are already working with the League of Women Voters. That ought to be a cemented relationship. You ought to put a lot more into building out those relationships. You need allies and partners that will rise up when you have a struggle over funding, because you can't just do it on your own, right? Community access has to be community, so you've got to have people involved and engaged on that. So build your coalitions. Don't build them merely in a time of crisis. Build them in times of strength as well, with the idea of having a strong enough coalition to make demands, but also to push back when the sanctity of your institution is violated. Now, secondly, what you have to do is put pressure on your local officials if they're playing these games. You've got to put pressure on from the community itself, but also from outside. Because often local officials are more conscious of what's being said about them from beyond than from what's going on locally. So I want you to email me the details of your struggle.
All right, just one more
No, well, let me just finish. jnichols at thenation.com.
10 seconds.
Yeah.
Albany, New York is a one-party city. We have not elected a Republican since 1906. So there is no political pressure. Our Common Council is 15 members, all Democrats. You know, there's There's no pressure that could be put on this mayor or the previous mayors, and we had one mayor for 43 years in the city of Albany. So I'm trying to explain, this is not the solution.
I know it's not easy, but building the coalitions is still vital. And what I said to you in the second part of that is probably even more important. You need to email me the details of your struggle so I can write about it, right? So that we can make, so that I can use you as an example of a problem that exists across this country. And the problem isn't a local politician. And it isn't even the vagaries of local politics. The problem is political and community leaders who do not understand that community access media is the absolute essential ingredient for making not just democracy, which some of them may not even be that excited about, but for making a functional community. The fact of the matter is, old media is dying. New media is not prepared to fill the void. Community access media is the essential tool to build out our democracy and to build up our communities in the 21st century. I don't come to you because I like you. I don't come to you because Mike asked. I don't come to you to hear Mary do her imitations of Bostonians, although it was very good. I come to you because I'm desperate and scared. I believe American democracy faces fundamental challenges, and those challenges are not going to be answered from the top down. They're going to be answered from the bottom up, from our communities across this country. Our towns are the solution to our problems, and you are the voices of our towns, and I'm so honored to be with you tonight.
Thank you.
I say only this, solidarity. Ladies and gentlemen, John Nichols.
Let's hear it again for John Nichols.
Welcome back, guys. I'm Ashley Hardy.
And I'm Dan Hogan, back here after the keynote address, actually sitting here with John Nichols, who just gave a very rousing keynote address to the 600 people here in attendance at the ACM conference in Boston. So John, I want to start by asking you, probably got to reiterate some of the things you just talked about, but expand on the real importance of community media, as you said, with mainstream media really dying.
Yeah, and honored to be on with you both, because this is exactly what we need. We need community programming like this in every town across this country to fill the void that is being created. The fact of the matter is that we have a lot of national media that will cover presidential politics, that will cover major issues at the national and international level. Unfortunately, too much of our local media, that which still exists, the commercial media, tries to imitate the national media. It just covers the same stories, maybe with a little bit of localization, but not really going deep into the community. Daily newspapers are closing or are dramatically reducing their staff. Radio stations, since the Telecommunications Act of 1996, have literally culled out their local programming, their local hosts. TV stations, commercial TV stations, increasingly are cutting minutes off their newscasts in order to fit more ads in at election time. And frankly, a lot of those local newscasts done by people I respect, really sincere people who are trying, but they're in a situation where they're pressured by consultants to do exercise tips or immense amounts of crime coverage, even when there isn't that much crime, or weather, and then a little sports. So the fact of the matter is we've got a gap in our communications in this country. It is harming us. We have lower and lower turnout for local elections in many parts of the country. We have community groups struggling to get attention, to tell their story. And when problems blow up, when a community has a crisis, then media, commercial media pays attention. But I will argue that if we cover the stories from the start, if we're deeper in at the beginning, we have a much better chance of addressing the crisis before it explodes, and also of getting our politics to function. And so I think that in the 21st century, community media is going to have to step up and fill the void. And I believe that funders, foundations, donors, and others have to understand this, that in order for us to have a functional democracy and to have functional communities, we need to provide dramatically more funding for community access stations across this country.
So I want to talk a little bit about, you co-founded Free Press. Can you talk a little bit about that, and what does it entail?
Sure. Free Press is the nation's media reform network. We call it a network because there are many, many groups working on media reform in this country, doing media justice, doing media production, doing literal, like policy initiatives, all sorts of wonderful groups going on. We founded Free Press in the hopes of creating an organization that could amplify all this activism and hopefully pull some of it together. It was started in 2002, 2003. We've had a series of national media reform conferences that have drawn 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people. And I guess to the extent that we've had success, it's been in getting people focused on particular struggles and winning some of them. We beat back the Bush administration's attempt to dramatically diminish laws preventing consolidation of media. More recently, we were a part of the wonderful coalitions that were developed to fight to maintain net neutrality. And now we are working on a host of issues as regards funding of public media and community media, as well as all the old struggles, because the fact is on media issues, painfully, they never go away. Media is a way that large corporations can make a lot of money if they structure it right, if they get the rules on their side. That's fine, I don't mind people making money, but what I do mind is when the rules are structured against community media, public media, media that citizens have a much greater stake in. And so our struggle is to make sure that we have a media in this country that is diverse, not just diverse in who's on air, although that's important, but also diverse in its ownership, diverse in its inputs, who has a way of suggesting what it might cover, what might be done, and also, I think really importantly, that is competitive, that there's a lot of media. We don't want to have consolidated, simplistic media. We want to have complex and engaging and diverse media.
Now, with election season, or November coming up, the election coming up, something that you said in your speech that I think is absolutely true is that a lot of people in communities don't know who their town politicians are, don't know who their, who even their, school officials, town officials. They don't know who any of those people are. What can local community access stations do this November to, enhance the public's awareness of who their counselors and who their officials are?
That's a fantastic question, because I like the immediacy of it. You're asking, what can we do now? There's a lot of things longer term that we need to do. But now, what community access stations can do is affiliate with the League of Women Voters and other groups that have a tradition of organizing debates, but that have often been pushed aside by commercial media. Certainly we've seen that at the presidential level. Say to them, we want you to do this. We want to work with you. Some stations are already doing it. We're not reinventing the wheel, but saying, we want you to do this. And then when you organize a debate, don't do it in your studio. Go out, get the high school gym, put a table there, have your legislative candidates or your congressional candidates, and have it be a big event. Have it be a community event. Don't be worried if partisans on different sides come and cheer and yell. That's fine. That's great. American democracy has always been raucous and fun and engaging. Our problem is we have too few forums for that debate. So organize those debates, and then also do something else which community access stations don't do enough of. Find funding to promote the fact that you're airing this debate. And that's a big deal. Commercial stations constantly promote what they're doing. They advertise, they put billboards up, they advertise in the newspaper, wherever. They spread the word that they're showing this program. It's usually like, lost on a desert island without food or whatever it is this week, right? but you're doing something that's really important to the community. Promote it. Let people know that it's there. Don't just expect people to find it on those channels. Those are steps that can be taken right now. And then there's one other thing too. We have this presidential race. It's incredibly intense. There's no doubt of that. People are covering it at the national level. But one way to bring it down home is to have a debate where you have local folks debating the presidential race. Like get the local chair of each party and have them debate it. Let them do that, but let them do it at home. And instead of having them just debate at the national level, let people from the community ask them questions about things that matter to the community. You can cover presidential politics, I don't mind that, but do it in a way that's connected to your place.
So they mentioned, and you had mentioned that you're a journalist, you're a writer, and your most recent book, first of all, what's the title of your most recent book?
People Get Ready, the fight against a jobless economy and a citizenless democracy. And it's a book about the rapid digital and automation revolution that's taking place. It's going to change everything about our lives. It already has changed a lot. We're literally live streaming, which is something that would have been a radical idea not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
Somebody in Reykjavik, Iceland could be watching us at this very moment. And so we know that a lot is changing. Many of these changes are jarring. They're going to be challenging. A lot of jobs that exist now aren't going to exist 20 years from now. What we need to do as a society is to start thinking about how we're going to organize a functional society with a lot different work and maybe even a lot less work. Maybe we need to work less. Maybe we need a guaranteed income. There's all sorts of issues that we should be addressing that by and large are not being addressed currently in our politics or our media. And so one of the things that community media can do is take up these big issues. It's an interesting thing. Community media is local, right? And it's sometimes thinks of itself as hyper-local, and that's good. That's what it should be. But that doesn't mean that community media can't address the biggest issues going on, because there are some times where commercial media fails, and community media may be our only way to have debates about automation, the digital revolution, and how it's changing our lives.
You speak very eloquently, by the way. I just want to make that.
Oh, that's awfully kind of you. So do you, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you too.
Thank you. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to. Have you ever been to the conference before?
I've been to state conferences around the country. I've never been to the national conference. Mike, who is the, I hope I get the title right, executive director, is somebody we've known from media reform over the years. He invited me to come this year, and I've been very honored to be here because as I said at the close of my remarks, I am not here just because I like what you do, although I do. I'm here because I'm desperate. I believe that our existing media system is failing democracy, and I think that community access stations genuinely have an ability to step up and fill the void, and we need you to do more, but those of us who are not engaged, not doing community access programs, we need to step up and support you. We need to find ways to get funding. We need to find ways to build out these stations because, frankly, that's essential to democracy. It's not just essential to what you do, it's essential to something much bigger.
Why do you think it's important for a convention like this to happen where everybody gets to bounce ideas off each other? And
Because genius is collective. Genius is never individual. We write about it in the wrong way. We always find somebody who invented something, we think, oh wow, that's the smartest person in the world. Increasingly, and I spent a lot of time on history of science, increasingly what we learn is that when great scientific breakthroughs come and when great societal breakthroughs come, it's when groups of people get together and keep bouncing ideas off each other, bringing their new ideas in and then being challenged that you really solve problems. And so a conference like this is a place where, yes, you can solve the technical problems, the individual problems, but hopefully late at night when all the small scale challenges are addressed, people will think big and think about what a national network of community access stations might be able to do as a genuine challenge to, frankly, a broken media system and a broken politics. I think it's out of places like this that the biggest answers can come, and it's only going to happen when we're all together talking.
All right, excellent. John Nichols, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Totally honored.
Excellent
it's a
speech.
Pleasure.
And that is going to be a wrap for us today here at the ACM Conference in Boston.